What's going on, guys? Welcome to another episode of Spartan Kid Outdoors. I am your host, Leonidas. So today, the weather's a little too crummy to go out and fish, so I figured I would tell you guys what my top 5 favorite baits are for cold water winter bass. So without further ado, let's get into it. A quick disclaimer for you guys: the baits that are going to work for me might not necessarily work for you guys. I've experienced success fishing with these baits in the Portland Northwest, so Oregon. These are the baits I've had luck with in the past. Now, I know you guys are all over the country, and in some cases out of the country, so this might not work for you guys, but I mean, they're good all-around baits, so I mean, it wouldn't make sense why they wouldn't, but these are the baits that work for me up here in Oregon. So let's get into it. The first bait I wanted to talk to you guys about, know a lot of people probably use for these cold water bass, is the shaky head. With this shaky head, I simply choose a darker colored trick worm. So I have one right here that's blue with a blue flake and little silver flakes in there too. What I like to do is I like to just kind of bite a little bit of the tip off there. You just twist that sucker onto there like so. And now the trick to getting this to stand up right all the way is you want to see where the tip of your hook sits, right there. And you want to go a little bit further back, up and over, and you want to really just skin hook that so it's weedless and adjust it as so. And so when it drops down into the water, it's got this flat part, it's gonna sit there, and this has a floating tail, so as you skip it, it'll give it some action. So that's one of my top favorite baits for the cold water bass. I think it's literally the best, if not second best, bait for cold water bass. The second bait that I like to use when I'm going out and doing some cold water bass fishing is the Ned Rig. Now, this is the Zemon Ned Rig. They designed their own mushroom head, I think is what they call them. This is an 1/8 ounce mushroom head Ned Rig. And the reason I like this is because it has a bait keeper here. And it's got these little, it's weedless. It's got these little wire guards here that help you get through the weeds with this thing. I like to use the California Craw because it's got a dark side on one side and it's a little bit lighter on the other. So it's like, and it's got a little bit of a red flake. So I want to say it's like a green pumpkin and a watermelon on the other side. And the way you want to rig this guy is you just want to work it down the hook here. Now it gets kind of hard with these with these little wire meshes, but you really want to work it down the hook, and you really want to work it right before that bait keeper. Bring it through the body there and just work it up the hook like so. And you should have something that looks kind of like this. Like I said, it's a little tough to get on there, but you should have something that kind of looks like this. And when it drops into the water, it drops down, and this one floats a little bit. It's kind of like the shaky head, but not really. As you work it, look at the action on that thing. So as you twitch it, twitch, it jiggles around. So this is the 1/8 ounce Zemon Ned Rig. My third bait of choice might be a common one for you guys. I use this not even during just colder months. I use this year-round to catch bass. The good old-fashioned Wacky Rig Senko. So what I like to use is the smallest hook I could possibly find. I think this one's an Eagle Claw. I'm not quite sure of the size, but this is what I use for my drop shots, for my weightless wackies, and the whole nine. So I really like the Big Bite Baits worms. This one is a green pumpkin, and they have these little slits there. What I like to do with this thing is kind of use that as my guide of where I'm going to be putting this hook. I like to do it about, a 1/2 inch behind that, so that it sits just like so. Now, if you want to get a reaction strike, and sometimes that's when they'll strike it, so a lot of the times they'll strike it as it's coming down. But if it's sitting in front of them and they're just kind of looking at it, you give it a couple twitches and it flutters up and flutters back down. And that kind of, it's a super slow presentation. You twitch it like, man, I want to say once every 30 seconds to 45 seconds in between twitches, because you really want to work this bait as slow as possible. And just cover water with that. I mean, you want to cover as much water as possible. It's slow fishing. It's going to take a little bit to cover water with this thing, but just fan cast. I mean, cast to the left, to the right, to the center, the whole nine. So just let this guy sink 30 to 45 seconds before you twitch it again. Let it sink again. Wait for the line to go slack, reel it up, and continue. My fourth bait that I like to use for wintertime fishing is going to be the good old-fashioned drop shot. Now, the thing that I do a little bit differently with this during the winter time that I do in the warmer months is I shorten up the leader. Normally I have a 10 to 12 inch leader because they're a little bit, they're not as close to the bottom as they are in the winter months. So in the winter months, I shorten that leader up as much as possible. I like to use more of a pencil weight. It's a little bit slimmer profile. It gets into those tougher to reach places, and if you hit the bottom where it's rocky, it's easier to come out than the ball weight is. It doesn't get jammed up as much. At least that's my experience with it. Again, I use that Eagle Claw hook. It's a small hook. I will find exactly what hook it is and put it down in the description below. I'll put all these baits in the description below. And this is what I use. I just shorten up the leader with this drop shot, and I think that's key because these fish are close to the bottom. So I think shortening up that leader brings it closer to their face, and it makes it more appetizing to them because they don't have to swim up and snag it. What I like to rig with this one is a darker colored worm. I believe this is green pumpkin. It looks black right now, but it's green pumpkin, and it's got a ribbon tail that's chartreuse. And the way I rig it when I am doing the drop shot is you can nose rig it here. So you bring it up about half an inch from the bait, bring it up through that bait, and you bring it to the center. And so when it sits in the water, it's sitting just like so, the weight's hitting the bottom, and this one floats. So being that the Senko floats, as you're dragging it, it's sitting like this and the tail's wiggling as you work it down. You don't want to wait for your line to get slack because you want to keep the tension between the weight and the hook so that it's suspended from the bottom, and you just want to work it. Reel up your slack, give it a couple twitches, reel up your slack, give it a couple twitches. Now I'd pause a little bit in between the twitches, maybe not quite as long as you're pausing with just the weightless Wacky. With this one I would twitch every 15 to 30 seconds. And I like the chartreuse tail because it gives it that extra appeal factor. I think they're gonna see this a lot more. The waters where I'm fishing right now are a little bit more murky because we're getting a lot of rain and it's really stirring up the mud and the dirt underneath. So I like to use the darker presentation with this, with a little bit of a ribbon tail that's chartreuse, so that it's just that it factor that helps them see it a little bit better. So my fifth pick was kind of hard because I do use both of these baits for winter fishing, and I wanted to introduce one hard bait to this. These two baits that I'm going to show you next, I couldn't decide for my fifth pick. So I'm going to show you guys both of them. You guys decide what the best fifth bait would be out of these two, and leave it in the comment section below. I want to know what you would rather choose out of these two baits. The two baits that I have is a suspending jerkbait. That's bait number one of the two. A suspending jerkbait. I like these because depending on what depth you tie on, I mean, here water gets super deep because of the rain. A lot of rainfall means deeper lakes, deeper ponds, so on and so forth. So this one's a little bit shallower diving, but I like to use the 3 to 4 feet diving jerkbait that's suspending. That's the key, is a suspending jerkbait, because you jerk it, it goes down into where it needs to be. It mimics a dying bait fish, and it sits there and just kind of suspends there, and that's an easy target for these bass. And that's just an easy meal. They don't have to chase it. I mean, that's super quick. When it gets to colder water, a lot of these bait fish can't handle it and they start dying off. So a jerk bait really helps mimic a dying bait fish. You jerk it around, it darts around, it sits, suspends, and they come up and smash this thing. These things, you want to wait just as long, and if not longer, than what you do with the weightless Wacky. You want to wait 45 seconds to even a minute with this, guys, before you twitch it again. I know that sounds insane, I know it does, but it works. I'm telling you, at least for me it does. You don't have to wait that long. You can obviously probably twitch it faster and still have success, but where I have seen my success is twitching this thing, letting it suspend for 45 seconds to a minute, and then twitching it again. And you want to vary your twitching pattern, so do a few casts with twitching it twice. Give it 2 twitches, let it suspend. And I would say switch it up every 3 casts. So 3 casts, 2 twitches. Then the next 3 casts you want to do 3 twitches. And then the next 3 casts you want to do 1 twitch. You gotta find the cadence that these fish are wanting these bait fish to see, or what these bait fish are doing as they're dying off. The other bait that is a lipless crankbait. I like a lipless crankbait because they got a super tight wobble. This or a square bill crankbait. That's a flat-sided square bill crankbait. Super tight swim. The other crankbaits, your traditional crankbaits, will move a little bit more. The action will be a little bit wider. This one keeps it really tight as it's coming through the water, and that's why I like these guys. Now, what you want to do with this is you want to slow it down. This you can fish super slow. This sinks to the bottom. It's not suspending. So as you're working it, just reel it in slow. Use a slower gear ratio. I like to use my White Max. It's a 5:3 to 1. And just kind of, I mean, really work it slow, get that tight wobble going. So that's going to be it for us today, guys. Hopefully these tips and tricks help you guys get a few more fish. This kid's getting impatient. I'm actually in his room. I set this up because it's quieter. They were downstairs hanging out, but he's getting impatient and he wants to get in here and play. Hopefully this works for you guys. It works for me in the cold months, and we will catch you guys on another episode of Spartan Kid Outdoors. We'll see you guys later. Say bye.
Bye.
And guys, I almost forgot. Shout out to my boy Charles_logo_company on Instagram for making that logo at the beginning of this video. Shout out to him. Go hit him up if you want a logo. And shout out to my boy Jacob Peters. He hit me up on Instagram and asked if I could shout him out. So shout out to you, buddy.